Earlier this year, Brooks finally gave us some peba in the form of DNA Gold in the Hyperion Elite 4 PB. But I think that shoe doesn't tell the whole DNA Gold story. This is the Hyperion Max 3, and even though it's only partially peba, I think it's going to give us a better look at where Brooks is trying to go with DNA Gold. So let's lace up the Hyperion Max 3 and take it for a run. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm an Elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys about the Hyperion Max 3. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Brooks sent to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Hyperion Max 3, and let's start with the specs. This shoe is a tall boy coming in at 46 millimeters of stack height in the heel and a 6 millimeter drop, meaning we have 40 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. And there's 3 elements to this midsole system. On the bottom layer, we have DNA Flash version 2. That is Brooks' supercritical foam that is infused with nitrogen gas. It's a very responsive foam that we've seen in the Hyperion series since it began, when the Hyperion was called the Hyperion Tempo. And then on the top layer, that's where we have the newness. That is the peba layer that is on top of the shoe. It looks like it starts out pretty thin in the back of the heel, but as you get to the forefoot, you're getting a lot more of that. And so the ratio of the softer peba to the firmer and more responsive DNA Flash changes as you go from the heel to the forefoot. And then in between those 2 layers of foam, there is Brooks Speed Vault. Now, in this case, the Speed Vault is very different than the plate that's in the Hyperion Elite 4 PB, even though they're also calling that plate Speed Vault. That plate is made out of carbon fiber, and it's almost like a framework of a plate or a concepts of a plate that are going on in that shoe. In the Hyperion Max 3, we have a plastic plate that is pretty thick, and it looks to be in a Y configuration as the plate ends up splitting as you get towards the forefoot. And then there are some stabilizing elements or aspects as well, which is usually indicated by when the plate peeks out on the side of the shoe a little bit, which it does here on the medial or the interior side of the shoe. Now let's go back to the bottom of the shoe where we could see that Speed Vault plate. This cutout on the medial side or on the arch side of your foot is going to make the shoe a little bit easier to bend. And these holes up in the forefoot, I think mainly are going to be windows, but also it provides a little bit of space for the foam to compress as your foot hits the ground. Now, protecting all the midsole foam in this shoe is Brooks Road Tack rubber. Now, there is a lot of exposed foam on the bottom of the shoe, but where we do have that Road Tack, there is plenty of it. Moving to the upper, we have a mesh material that is very breathable in spots, and it's very strong, but it's not the stretchiest of materials, although we do have some knit material aspects to the shoe that are a little bit more stretchy, but those are less breathable, so there's a little bit of a trade-off depending on which part of the shoe we're talking about. In the heel collar, there is an ample amount of padding around the back. It's not max cushion shoe kind of padding, but there is enough back here to both protect the back of the ankle and to help ensure a secure fit. The heel cup is pretty rigid back here. There's a lot of structure, but it ends really nicely in that heel collar and in the knit material that wraps around to the top of the shoe and ends in this pull tab. The one thing there's 2 kind of unusual things about it. Because they're using knit materials at the top, it's really a booty construction type of shoe. There isn't a separate tongue, it's all kind of connected. And then there is a pad that runs along the center channel where the laces are going across. And I think that's intended there to provide extra protection against lace pressure. But I find that this pad is just a little bit too thick, and it's a little bit awkward, especially with the way that this asymmetrical tongue is kind of flared out over here. This little top part always kind of sits strangely on my foot. It doesn't cause any problems or irritation, just feel like it looks funny where it ends up landing. So I'm not loving the way that this is executed, or at least the way it's executed and looks on my foot. And then the other kind of strange thing about this shoe is there are extra lace holes if you want to do a runner's knot, but there's definitely not enough laces here. I can hardly tie a double knot. And so ultimately the feeling that I'm getting is I'm really liking the breathability of the mesh where it's breathable, but some of the materials that are kind of at the top of the shoe start to end up being a little bit too puffy and a little bit too not breathable, and it starts to get a little bit warm, which can be a concern because now we are getting into those summer months where we are going to be sweating a lot more. As far as fit, this went true to size for me. I went with my normal running shoe size, and I felt like the fit was really good, especially for a shoe in the tempo category or workout shoe category where you're going to be wanting to run a little bit faster. This shoe is tall, but it does come in at a pretty hefty weight, 9.9 ounces or 280 grams. Now that we talked about what this shoe is like on paper, let's talk about what it was like on the road. I can say that I was relieved when I ran in the Hyperion Max 3. The step-in comfort is great. I overall really like the design of the shoe, and I can definitely feel softness from the DNA gold layer. The Hyperion has always been a speedier shoe. The original Hyperion was called the Hyperion Tempo, and I really liked the DNA Flash foam that Brooke was using there. But while DNA Flash is a responsive and speedy material, it's certainly not the most cushioned. And so what I was hoping for with the Hyperion Max version 1 and 2 was that same sensation of tempo shoe, but with a little bit more cushion and compression to the foam. But instead what we got, to oversimplify, was a shoe that just felt like it got more foam. And doing that did make the shoe soften up just a little bit, but it really just felt like Brooks was giving us two shoes that they couldn't decide which stack heights they wanted to use, and so they just made both. But in Hyperion Max 3, we're finally getting some of that compression and softness that I was hoping for in a speedy package. And so Hyperion Max 3 for me is a relief. It's finally the shoe, or becoming the shoe, that I was hoping that Brooks would make. At easy paces, the shoe has a surprisingly agreeable ride, and I could definitely see a lot of people taking this shoe out for everyday easy running. But I also put some speedier efforts into the shoe as well. I ran some threshold effort work in it, and I did strides in the shoe as well. And I feel like the shoe handles speed very well. It's a very versatile shoe. But I do find the shoe to be a little bit on the heavy side. Maybe it's a little bit heavy for daily trainers in 2025, but I think for a tempo shoe, it's pretty heavy. And even for a long run shoe, it might be a bit on the heavy side. I think they could have done a lot of the same things with this shoe with a lot less. But if the shoe maybe isn't meant for me and it's meant for some of my bigger, taller friends, then I think the size of the shoe and the weight of the shoe start to make a lot more sense as a shoe that you can use for every day, speed day, and even race day. Now, before we wrap up this video, let's take a moment to zoom out and see where the Hyperion Max 3 fits within the broader Brooks lineup. Now, whenever I take a look at a brand, I always like to start with the Daily Trainer, and from Brooks, that is the Ghost. This is the Ghost 16. We're on version 17 now. I haven't had a chance to get that one in for testing yet, but the Ghost is the centerpiece of the Brooks lineup. It's the Daily Trainer, the kind of shoe that you could use for most of your runs on most of your days. But on a day where you might need a little bit more comfort, there is the Max Cushion shoe from Brooks, and that is the Glycerin 22. Now this shoe got some updates in terms of the foam this year. You're using a dual density foam system, and you're getting a much more cushioned experience in the Glycerin than you are for the Ghost. Now, for days where you want to race and run your fastest, that's where a shoe like the Hyperion Elite 4 PB comes in. This is going to be the race shoe of the series, and then in between, the race shoe that has the highest levels of technology and probably the least amount of comfort and durability, and the Daily Trainer, which has more durability and comfort but less race day features. There is the Tempo shoe, and from Brooks, that is the Hyperion. This is the Hyperion 2. Hyperion 3, I think, is on the horizon, but Hyperion 2 is the one that's currently available, and it has some speediness built into it, but also some durability as well. And this is the 4-shoe lineup from Brooks. I'm not saying you got to go out and get all 4 of these shoes to be able to have a good time, but these are the 4 main categories of shoes that Brooks makes. Now, where does the Hyperion Max fit in this? I think one way that we could possibly take a look at the Hyperion Max 3 is to put it on this end and call it a long run shoe. So a shoe that you wouldn't necessarily use for your race day, but has some race day features and is built for being in the shoe for a long time. So it's got a lot of comfort and it's got a lot of durability into it. But I think the better way to look at it is to look at the Max line of shoes and to look at them separately or as substitutions for what's going on in the regular Brooks lineup. So let's move some of these shoes over so we can take a look at the Max shoes. Now, as far as the racing shoe goes, there isn't really a corresponding Max shoe, but all of these other shoes have a Max version that goes along with them. And what Max means with Brooks, I think Brooks is still taking us to. I think they have a vision. They probably have a multi-year roadmap of what they want Brooks Max shoes to be. But right now, it depends on which version of Max shoe that you're looking at in terms of how kind of wild or how Max really is. So let's start with, I think, the maxiest of the Max shoes and my favorite Brooks shoe. This is the Glycerin Max, and it does the same thing that the Glycerin does. It's a Max cushion shoe, but it does it in a very different way. It gives you a very different experience. It's also using a dual density system. It used the dual density system before the Glycerin had it. So it was kind of an experimental place for this shoe. And it was a much more soft and cushioned and dynamic experience that I loved. Whereas normally for me, the Glycerin series tends to be a little bit more firm than I want for like a Max cushion or a recovery day kind of shoe. And so I was really loving what the Glycerin Max had in store for me. And then we also have the Ghost Max 3, which is the daily trainer. Again, it's very much doing the same things as a daily trainer would do, the Ghost would do, but it's doing it in a more cushioned for me and the kind of shoes that I tend to like way. And it's a lot taller, and for me that's primarily the biggest sensation that I'm getting from the Ghost Max 3 is that while it's a little bit more cushioned, it's just in a lot of ways a taller Ghost. And then here's where the Hyperion Max really fits in as a counterpoint to the regular Hyperion. Not only is it just taller than the regular Hyperion this year, it also has that DNA gold layer, which makes it feel really nice and soft and cushioned and provides the same kind of speediness, speed work role in a running shoe rotation, but it does it in a different way, an experience that's different than what the regular Hyperion offers. If you're not liking what the regular Brooks shoes are, then the Max shoes are something that I would push you towards and have you take a look at instead if you wanted to get a Brooks shoe. And I feel like the Hyperion versus Hyperion Max and the Glycerin versus Glycerin Max are really great examples or expressions of what Max could be from Brooks. Now let's wrap up the video by going over the buying guide, and we'll also discuss some of the alternatives. The Brooks Hyperion Max 3 is a versatile shoe that can handle everything from daily training to speed work. I'm really appreciating the softness that the DNA Gold top layer is providing in this year's update. But I think that the shoe is a bit heavy and still suffers from the idea that Max shoes have to be literally tall. And at $200, I feel like the price is a little bit off for what you're getting in this shoe. However, if you're one of my bigger, taller friends for whom shoes in this category tend to either be way too squishy or way too unstable, the Brooks Hyperion Max 3 might be just right for you, as this would be a shoe that you could use for daily training, your speed work, and also your race day. And in that case, the $200 price point starts to make a lot more sense. But the Hyperion Max 2 still does exist, and it's on sale at a discount now on the Brooks website for $150. So if that $200 price point is way too much, the Brooks Hyperion Max 2, even for my bigger, taller friends, is not as good a shoe, but it's pretty good and a more reasonably priced option. But let's also take a look at some other brands and see what the competition is bringing to the table. The first shoe that I think we need to take a look at is from Nike, and that is the Zoom Fly 6. There's a lot of similarities on paper in terms of what these two shoes are doing. There's a peba top layer, a daily training foam bottom layer, although in the Zoom Fly 6 it is a Cushlon layer, which is more like a regular EVA, and then in between those two layers there is a plate that you can see in the bottom. And these shoes are both designed for a little bit of daily training and also for speed work. I feel like I much prefer what the Zoom Fly 6 is doing. It's giving me speediness and softness with that peba and EVA combo, and I feel like the weight is right for the kind of shoe that this is, and I could use it for daily training, long runs, and also for my speed work. And that shoe comes in at a slightly better price of $180. But again, I think the better of these two shoes is really going to depend on kind of the type of cushioning. The amount of cushioning isn't the right word because they're both pretty tall. The way that the DNA Flash is a bit more resistant to compression of the foams, that may make it better for some of my bigger, taller friends, or for people who just want a little bit more firmness and stability underfoot in their speed work shoes. I'd say go with the Hyperion Max 3. But if you like shoes more along the lines of the way that I like shoes, where I like them really squishy, where the foams are compressing and decompressing a lot, I'd say go with the Zoom Fly 6. And then the next shoe that I think we need to take a look at is probably a closer of a comparison in terms of people who like the Hyperion Max 3 will like this one, and that comes from New Balance. This is the SC Trainer version 3. Now, we might have to squint our eyes just a little bit to see how closely these shoes are actually related, but hear me out. The SC Trainer version 3, while it only has technically one type of foam in it, it has a peba and EVA blend. So kind of like what the Zoom Fly 6 is bringing to the table, but the way that they're also implementing the carbon fiber plate that's in the shoe, plus the way that they've blended peba and EVA, give the shoe a ride that is a little more resistant to a lot of compression. So it's not completely squishing down and springing back as part of your foot strike. To me, it feels a little bit more responsive, and I'm not pushing down nearly so far into the foam on this one. And so I'm getting a similar, some softness, which is pleasant, but also a lot of really good responsiveness. Now, while the SC Trainer version 3 is a pretty tall shoe, I really wish they wouldn't have backed off from version 1, where I think that was pretty much most people's favorite version of the SC Trainer when it was a jumbo stack height shoe. After version 1, it's perennially becoming under the 40mm mark, which seems unnecessary for shoes in this category, where you can use them for everyday training, speed work, and also for some people it's going to be an ideal race shoe. And while both of these shoes to me feel a little bit on the heavy side for extended speed work, I do prefer the feeling and sensation that I'm getting both at easy paces and at speed work in the Hyperion Max 3. The main benefit for me right now between these two shoes though is that the SC Trainer version 3 comes at a significant discount, and you can find it as low as $144 on the New Balance website. So those are my thoughts on the Hyperion Max 3. It's an update that I appreciate, and I think it's the best yet of the Hyperion Max series. If you have any other questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?